Welcome to People Who Perform, the Real Estate Careers Podcast. Each episode will bring you conversations from business leaders and up-and-coming stars in the commercial real estate industry in Canada. Our guests will share their unique career journeys, passions, and advice on what it takes to be successful in this industry. This podcast is brought to you by Highview Partners, connecting people who perform in Canadian real estate.
I'm your host, Richard Costello, and today I'm pleased to introduce Denise Wong. Denise Wong is Senior Vice President, Eastern Canada for Brookfield Properties Canadian Office Division. The portfolio comprises of approximately 10 million square feet of office space in Toronto and Ottawa. Denise brings over 15 years of commercial real estate experience focused on the office sector. Denise holds a Bachelor of Commerce degree from the University of Calgary and an MBA from Queen's University. Denise, a big welcome to you and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Richard, for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. So as I mentioned in your bio, you've been in the real estate industry for over 15 years. What first attracted you to the real estate industry?
So, Richard, I actually first started my career not in commercial real estate. I had moved to Toronto to join one of the major life insurance companies, and I thought I was going to build my career in insurance and risk management. And it was, really interesting work in some degree. I know some people might find that difficult to believe with insurance. But that being said, I found that the product itself wasn't tangible. It was this contract that's kind of floating out there. So when I discovered real estate, it was really the tangibility of the asset and the fact that you can see the real estate, feel the real estate, experience the real estate. So that's kind of what really appealed to me. And then furthermore, I was lucky enough that I really found my lane within commercial real estate, and I was able to build a career in it.
So how did you make that first move across from insurance into the real estate industry?
So I had moved to Redcliffe Realty Management, which is now Trio Best, and I was still in the corporate department of risk management and insurance. And I think it was just the exposure of being in real estate that made me realize this is the industry that I wanted to build my career in. And then from there, I realized that insurance would always be more of a corporate function, and I really wanted to be in the driver of the business in one of those core functions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So there were no sort of family members or close friends that steered you in this direction. It was quite a natural discovery.
It was natural, and it was pure chance, I think, to a certain degree. And I was just lucky enough that once I was in a real estate function and in that environment, I decided, this is where I really want to plant and establish my career.
It's fair to say you've developed an expertise in asset management now, having held progressive roles in this area of the business for the past 10 years. In my experience of recruiting for various real estate companies, it seems like the role of an asset manager can really differ from one group to another. So in general terms, how would you define asset management, and what is the role of an asset manager from the Brookfield perspective?
So I'm going to share my perspective and the role from the operating platform of Brookfield. So Brookfield Properties is the operating platform, and that's where we manage the real estate on behalf of the owners, which includes our parent company, Brookfield Asset Management. So in this respect, Brookfield Properties, we really look at core long-term assets, and we approach the business in that way as well. So even when we do our annual business planning, as an example, we will do 10-year capital plans. We will work with capital markets, and we will look at putting potentially long-term debt on our assets as well. So again, it's really coming back to those core assets that we foresee holding on to with a long-term view and perspective. And really, I've always kind of described asset management as the glue. So, we work closely with property management, construction services, legal, accounting, leasing, development, and kind of pulls everything together.
Okay. All right. No, fantastic. So what's the relationship with and differences between property management and asset management?
So I would say that property management oversees the day-to-day site activities at a building level. You know, both functions, I think, have aspects of relationship management, contract management, operations, and financial um, skills set that you need to bring. This being said, I think the weighting of those differ between the two roles. Property management probably having a much more weighting placed on operations, potentially on the asset management side, a bit more on the financial side and valuation side as well.
Okay. And to what extent do you get involved in leasing?
So we work really closely with our leasing team. When we're in the office under normal circumstances, our groups actually sit side by side. So we liaise with them on a regular basis. And, you know, it's really important for us to be on the same page to ensure that we're joined up and that we're headed in the same direction so that the experience for either the tenant broker or the occupant themselves is really smooth and seamless when they deal with us as a team. So we're in constant dialogue on business terms. We then make sure that, you know, our timelines can be met working with construction services, and we really do focus on that quality of experience.
What are some of the considerations that the leasing team has to take into account to satisfy their counterparts in asset management?
Well, for sure, I'm not going to be shy about it. The rents and you know, also the term that we're putting on the space, potentially what type of tenant inducements we could be looking at. And ultimately, the one thing that our team will do is we'll make sure that we'll do the financial covenant review and then potentially look at additional security if warranted. And that's really important to our business as well.
One leasing term that is often discussed is the WALE or WALT. Can you perhaps explain the importance of this and how it impacts your properties?
So that's typically either the weighted average lease term or weighted average lease expiry. And that's something that as a long-term core office product that we look at, we definitely are very mindful of our vault or WALE on a given asset and then also on a portfolio basis as well. So that's where we have the discussions with leasing when it comes to structuring terms, especially with large significant spaces potentially where you don't want a critical mass expiring in the same year. So, you know, we'll work closely to make sure that, you know, it's one thing if you can secure long-term leases, but if it all rolls in 1 year, that's potentially a higher risk, and you might try to tranche out a few of the tenants that comprise of that expiry risk and just smooth it out a bit.
Thanks for that explanation, Denise. How much reporting is involved in your role, and what are the main items that you keep track of?
So reporting is a significant aspect of the asset management role. We do a lot of detailed internal and external reporting at both an asset level and a portfolio level. Clearly, you know, for our partners who are coming to us to manage their real estate, they absolutely want to be kept abreast of, you know, leasing updates, operational updates, any planned capital projects that are going on. So typically there is a pretty detailed reporting package on both a monthly and quarterly basis, and it is co-owner specific, but those are generally the updates that are encompassed in those reporting.
Denise, what do you think it takes to be a successful asset manager?
I would say attention to detail is paramount. The ability to prioritize and juggle competing demands is really important. The ability to be flexible and change how you approach things, from being able to dive into the weeds at a very micro level and then bring it back up to a broader macro level is really important as well. And of course, I would say, you know, I think some of these probably cross into other roles, but relationship building, negotiation skills, and communication skills, including listening skills. So this applies, I think, to the broader commercial real estate industry and not necessarily specific to asset management, but it is, I think, very critical to commercial real estate as an industry.
What's the ideal education background required to set an asset manager up for success?
I think that if you have a commerce degree, economics degree, that it's not that it necessarily sets you up better, but I think it might speak to that underlying skill set and natural aptitude that could make you successful in an asset manager role or commercial real estate.
I often hear from commercial property managers who have aspirations to move into asset management. I find it's easier for those who have the finance and accounting background to make this transition. Without this, can a property manager be groomed to become an asset manager, do you think?
Absolutely. But again, I think you have to have that interest and the desire to get into the numbers and to run the analysis. And I think what's a bit potentially a difficult transition is, you're not actually actively managing the projects on site and the team that's doing that anymore. So I think if you can wrap your head around making that transition in the role itself, which as asset management is less operationally focused. So that skill set, though, of having an operations background will inevitably, be very beneficial. But you do have to be able to understand numbers. And in our case, it means understanding valuations as well, right? So it's not just your year one, it's really looking and understanding numbers over the long term.
You touched on valuations, and there's been a lot of uncertainty at the moment regarding property valuations. Can you comment on why this is?
What's been difficult with COVID is the fact that the world and the economy, for the most part, hit a big pause button. And in that pause button, typically, we'll look to recent data transactions for the metrics and valuations. And without having those data points to look to, I think that's where you hear the sound bites in the market that valuation is a bit difficult to peg right now. So obviously, everyone I think recognizes there's some disruption definitely in the immediate term. So, a lot are looking now at what their AR could be and whether there should be updates to valuation models for credit loss provisions, for example. But from an overall investment parameters, until the market picks up and the economy reopens and, that there is a transaction to look to that kind of indicates where valuations are. That's probably where those sound bites are coming from. But this being said, I think prior to COVID, unlike the crisis in 08-09, the capital markets were sound. So the foundation was there, and what we're really dealing with is a health pandemic. And so I think that's what's making the whole valuation cycle a bit tricky right now.
That does make sense. Thanks for that explanation. So Denise, you have a great perspective on the office market right now. Do you think there will be any lasting design or operational changes that will come out of the response to the pandemic?
So I think from a design perspective, again, I don't think COVID has pushed anything to major changes. I think for sure there will be operational adjustments in the short term to manage through COVID, potentially until hopefully there is a vaccine that's found. And of course, everyone may have what's the next COVID-19 on their mind, but that's where you take the lessons learned from everything that was done to manage COVID. And I think for the most part, buildings and employers have been able to make those operational adjustments appropriately. And so those will, I'm sure, be updated into some type of a business continuity plan or pandemic planning, and we'll find the right balance.
Switching gears a little here, from a property perspective, what technological advancements have made the biggest impact and added the most value over the past 10 years, in your opinion?
I think from a new build perspective, the advancement in column-free design was from an efficiency and how occupiers could use and design a space was instrumental to not have structural columns in the way. So I would say that from a new development perspective. Of course, there's been lots of enhancements with energy and HVAC initiatives and technology there, which has brought upon, good energy practices and sustainability. moving in the right direction, which is always a really, really good thing. And of course, there's been updates in security as well. And a lot of these things, your average occupier in the office may not realize. And one thing that potentially the average occupant may be more cognizant of is destination dispatch with vertical transportation. And that one's always a funny one because I think it's one of those things where a destination dispatch made sense for certain buildings. And it's, again, one of those things that just became the market norm. But again, having that type of technology, especially with certain buildings and the composition of its occupancy, made a big difference as well.
Denise, what is destination dispatch for anyone unfamiliar?
So I think a lot of people will see this in newer buildings and also any buildings that have recently gone through an elevator modernization. So destination dispatch the technology is really designed to reduce your overall travel time. Not so much your wait time in the lobby per se, but it'll typically try to group people and find the fastest grouping to ensure that people get to their destination in the least amount of time.
Okay. So, for example, if you're in the lobby of a high-rise office building, there are certain elevator doors that take you to certain floors. Is that what you're referring to?
Correct. So it'll either be through a touchpad of the or card swipe, and you won't have the floor selection when you enter the elevator cab. So it'll direct you to which cab to go to, and then that will take you to your destination.
Are you looking for a trusted recruiter who lives and breathes Canadian real estate? At Highview, we bring over 20 years of recruiting experience to help steer you in the right direction. We are passionate about your success in this industry, so we will arm you with important information and give you the tools to make the best choice. Contact Highview Partners today to discover how we can connect you to people who perform.
Turning the focus to your experiences and advice now then, Denise, what do you credit your success to?
I would say it's been a combination of discipline, hard work, combined with some good timing. I was lucky enough that I found the right role, and that's been critical to, always enjoying your work for the right reasons. And I think that goes a long way. And, I was also really lucky that I found a company that aligns with who I am and kind of what I believe in as well. And I've had the great fortune of having a lot of mentors who have helped shape me as an individual and as a professional. And I would say, by working with these caliber of people and having these people who have helped mentor and shape me, it's always inspired me to not just work at a certain level and think that it's good enough. It's always inspired me to step up to, where they're performing at and where they're working at. And I think that's been really critical to my motivation.
That's an interesting comment you made about how it's important for your personal values and those of the company to align. Could you maybe elaborate on that?
I don't think your career and your relationship with your employer is any different than potentially your personal relationships, right? So you have to find a place and a niche where it's a good fit, where you can feel like you can be yourself and that you have more good days than bad and that you want to be in it for the long run and you truly believe in the business and bringing your best every single day.
I think that's a great answer. Okay, so what's the greatest lesson you have taken from failure?
I know it sounds really simple, but I would say the greatest lesson has been to persevere and work through the disappointment and to take the time to self-reflect and then really to still be grateful and be able to reframe it as not so much a failure, but what were the lessons learned, and then move forward from there. I think that's been really critical. And working through that initial disappointment is obviously the most difficult part of the process. But typically, if you can get through that and you can reframe things to what were the lessons learned, then you can kind of move forward and see past the disappointment. And I've always been a believer that things tend to work out one way or another, even if it wasn't what I had initially planned or anticipated. And I think that just has always helped by having that frame of mind that it's a lesson learned and not a failure.
Inside of your job, what puts the fire in your belly and gets you out of bed every morning?
So I think I probably touched upon this in one of my previous answers, but it really is that drive for results and that motivation that, just coming in and doing my job isn't good enough. I really want to come in and do the best that I can. And it's working towards, either getting things off my plate that I have on my to-do list, or accomplishing a goal, or whether it's a corporate initiative that we're working on. And really working with the team and hoping that, collectively we're getting to where we need to be.
I'm interested to hear your take on leadership. What do you think it takes to be a great leader?
I think a great leader is built on authenticity and building trust ultimately. You have to have the tact to be able to deliver difficult messages sometimes. And so that's important to be able to do so with human empathy and grace and kindness, right? I think if you kind of keep those core fundamentals, it goes a long way. I've always been a big believer in the saying, say what you mean and do what you say. And again, it's that whole comes back to that foundation of building trust, because if you do that in an authentic manner, then people will take you for face value. And I think, you really just have to demonstrate and lead by example. Obviously, I think recognizing others along the way and knowing that, it's never just one person, it really is a team of people and it's a collective effort, and expressing that. And then also on the flip side, I think it's important as a leader to be able to admit when you got it wrong, because we all get it wrong at some point, right?
Yeah.
And so just to acknowledge it and be able to own up if you got something wrong and address it, and then move forward with the team.
I think they're excellent points. Be authentic, empathetic, kind, say what you mean, do what you say, lead by example, recognize the collective effort and acknowledge that, admit your mistakes, be human. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So Denise, when your motivation is running low, what do you do to raise your game?
So for me, I've always been on the top of my game when I keep in a good routine. So for me, I would probably bring it back to my bare basics of getting in a good workout. I used to go to the gym at 5:30 in the morning. That's not happening anymore. So I've had to kind of do these virtual substitutions, which hasn't been working so well. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like giving yourself those little indulgences or treats, and whether that's an extra glass of wine, or just, maybe getting yourself, a little something that just makes you feel good, whether it's a, nice big latte or something in the afternoon. So when I'm really stretched to my limit, I just kind of do those little things. And, I've always believed that life doesn't put any challenges in front of you that you can't handle. So it might push you to the edge, but you can actually handle. So you just kind of take those moments, dig deep, get through. And then, of course, maybe booking a vacation or, something that as a prize is a great motivator, as a tangible reward too. That never hurts.
Getting some form of exercise done in the morning is a great way to set yourself up for the day. And it's perhaps even more important when working from home, when it's all too easy to go straight from bed to the breakfast table and then to the laptop, which is also possibly at the same table.
Oh, if I don't get it done first thing in the morning, it won't happen. So I just learned that about myself over the years, that it was actually how I felt my best, and it was the only way that I could get that consistency in.
Knowing what you know now, what advice would you have for your younger self?
I think I would have given myself the advice to let go of the things that you can't control. My parents always had instilled in me the importance of, doing your best, and I absolutely appreciated that. But I think that extra little bit of advice there would have gone a long way, because for me personally, I used to struggle with the why. I tried my best. I worked so hard. And it didn't happen. I don't understand why. And sometimes there is no why. So it was probably later on in life and over time where I just kind of realized that, you know what, if I did my best and, I did everything I could within my control and it still went sideways or it didn't work out, then, that's it. Like, you just don't even bother perseverating about it. Just let it go. Because it's just it can be such an energy zapper otherwise. And I think I would have told my younger self, because I was much more stubborn in my earlier years, to really take constructive feedback without judgment and at full consideration at face value, and then try to incorporate what resonated with me, or where I thought, you know what, that is actually constructive feedback that I think has truth and that I should try to improve upon. And that took, a bit of time for me to kind of get to that stage as well. And lastly, I think maybe the importance of just knowing that you're not always going to be liked for everything that you do, especially as you have to make more and more difficult decisions sometimes. But that's okay, and it comes with the turf, and to, again, just kind of let that go too, because sometimes the general, population might not understand some of the details due to confidentiality or due to, privacy issues or whatever that may be. And so sometimes you're not always going to be liked. And again, that's okay too.
What advice would you have for anyone starting out in the industry?
Never discount hard work. And you absolutely need to put your hand up and look for opportunities and take the initiative to find your path and kind of find where you want to dig in with respect to your career, right? And that might be, in the early years, you might have to try different things to kind of figure out where you fit in. And for me, earlier on, I always knew that this side of real estate was where I wanted to be. I didn't want to focus fully on an investments role. And I kind of figured that out earlier enough that I could, have some experience in that to do it and to have that skill set, but know that that's not where I wanted to build my long-term career. So I think if you keep an open mind and you're willing to try different aspects and then figure out what you like, and, even calling people up and having a coffee and trying to find those mentors along the way, that can be quite helpful as well.
Why do you think it was that investments was not the right route for you?
I think for me, it's, and I'm a bit of, I totally understand the appeal of that aspect of the industry. I know when I'm doing deals myself, or because it does happen from time to time, even being on the core asset side, there's a certain amount of adrenaline and, an excitement that goes with it. But for me, I think it came back down to the fact that a lot of it is, it's another asset, it's another rent roll, you're tweaking assumptions, you're looking at the returns. And I was more interested in, okay, well, what happens when you transition that asset in, or how do you implement and execute an asset strategy to, really achieve that long-term value and work the asset, really. So I think, again, that long-term view and working with all those different departments is what I personally found really interesting.
It seems to also come down to who you are as a person, Denise, and the path that you selected perhaps reflects who you are. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I have 5 quick-fire questions for you. Number 1, what is your favorite holiday destination?
So outside of Canada, I would say Iceland ranks as one of my top vacation spots, but my go-to place is actually Galiano Island on the West Coast.
Oh, very cool. And what book do you recommend to your friends most often?
It depends on the friend, but what I've recommended for a good holiday read is I Am Pilgrim. It's a good fictional, suspenseful, page-turner escapism read, so really good for a holiday.
What recent purchase up to $100 has improved your life?
I recently bought some soy aromatherapy candles from a company called Kooky, and it's a Canadian company as well.
Nice. Okay. Favorite COVID-19 TV show?
So the last Netflix series that I got through really quickly was The Last Dance, about the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan.
Yeah, I've seen that one too. Very good. If you could have a glass of wine this weekend with anybody, dead or alive, who would that be?
It would be my grandfather. So my grandfather passed away in December. He was 98, so an amazing life. Not unexpected at that age, but because he didn't have any health issues, it was unexpected. So that's without a doubt my answer would be my grandfather.
Oh, that's very sweet. Yeah, wow, 98.
Yeah.
That's
I hope I get those good genes.
Oh, that's cool. Denise, well, thank you very much. It's been really great to speak with you.
Likewise, Richard. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to People Who Perform, the Real Estate Careers podcast brought to you by Highview Partners, a talent search and recruitment firm focused exclusively on Canadian real estate. If your real estate team is looking to find the best next hire, or if you're ready to make the best next move in your career, then reach out to Highview Partners today. Follow us on LinkedIn and visit us at highviewpartners.ca.